Moshe was Rabbeinu, our teacher, but he's also Ro'enu, our shepherd, the one who led us, the Raya Mehemna, the trustworthy shepherd. And if we want to know what leadership is all about, we need to go further than looking into the life and times of Moshe Rabbeinu. And leadership remains one of those most important institutions in the world. Books come out every day with insights on how to be a great leader. Amazon, in a recent check, offered 57,136 books with the word leadership in the title. 57,136. We have rabbinic leaders, lay leaders, and in a certain sense, every head of a household is a leader, every father is a leader, every mother is a leader. Sometimes the mother's leading the father, sometimes the father's leading the mother. Okay. Which direction are you taking your family in? What values will you inculcate in your home? Those are the questions of leadership. We're going to look today at Moshe Rabbeinu at 3 stages. Moshe at 20, Moshe at 80, and finally what we see when Moshe was 120, Moshe the original 120-year-old, at the end of his life. And some of the lessons are going to jump out from simple reflection in the Psukim, and some will take a little more of a sophisticated look at some of the Mefarshim to deal with. So already, in last week's Parsha, as was mentioned and spoken about, Vayu b'yom ha'im v'yigdal Moshe became older. V'yetzei alecha v'yar b'sivlo sam. And he went out to his brothers and he saw in their burdens, v'yar ish mitzri makish yivrim ye'echov. And he saw an Egyptian hitting one of his brothers, v'yivin ko v'ko, and he turned this way and that way. V'yar ki'enish, and he saw there was no one, v'yachas ha'mitzri v'yidmeneo b'hochol. And he killed the Mitzri, and he buried him in the sand. How old was Moshe Rabbeinu when this story is happening? So the Medrash Seichel Tov, when the Midrashim tells us he was 20 years old. Moshe was 20 years old. The age of some of us, most of us already passed that stage. Think about where Moshe was and where we are. And there's a world of leadership to learn in these 2 short psukim. First off, he was V'yetzei Alechav. He went out to his brothers. Listen to the Malbim. Shagam shegol leveis hamelech. He was a viceroy. He was a prince in every sense of the word. He knew affluence. He knew success. He knew authority. V'yisrael hayu az b'tachlis hashiflos. And then the Jewish people was no great shakes. Nothing so exciting. Well, histir pana mehem. He didn't turn from them. V'yetzei aleim. That's V'yetzei el Echav. He went out to his brothers. He looked past the Chitzonis. He looked past the surface level. I'm up here and they're there. What shaykh is to have them? Why should I connect to them? V'yetzei el Echav. No, these are my brothers. Hefach mitev anashim. The opposite of the nature of many people. Shabalusum l'gdula, when they get famous, Yisrach gumei achayim. Haniyim devyonim. Right? It's a famous theme. And in literature, the guy who made it and suddenly doesn't have any time for his old-time friends, etc. My family, old news. A lot of stories in the sports world about this. Everybody's trying to get money from him. The opposite of that teva. So that's obviously lesson number 1. You have to go out to your people. Don't sit in your ivory tower ignoring the plight of the Jewish people. Baruch Hashem, I'll marry a nice girl. My family's doing well. Get a little parnasa. Good. And I hope the Jewish people doesn't fall apart. But it's not my thing. V'yetzei alechav. Go out. That's what leadership is. See what's going on. Be part of the story of Klal Yisrael in your community. It's not just your own personal story. The Malbim speaks about the human nature of people when they get wealthy or affluent, politicians. It's called prominence, so they forget the little people along the way. For Bali Tshuva, maybe that would translate a little differently. To desire sometimes to be only in a world of Kedusha, which is a positive desire. But you can't let that desire to keep you from connecting to Klal Yisrael. Don't be selfish. Every Baal Tshuva was chosen. Every Ger Tzedek was chosen. The Ashkacha to get us to where we are. And you were chosen not for yourself, but for others. But it's not just enough to go out, V'yetzei alechav. We'll go out, make some trouble, bust some heads, get a little noise, a little provocation. No, V'yar b'siv l'asam. Next thing in the pasuk. V'yar b'siv l'asam. He saw in the burdens, he saw in the difficulties that Klal Yisrael was going through. The Medrash says, Shayro bochem l'achnin. Moshe was crying from what they were going through. V'noton ketefov. In kol echav echik de l'saimim. He would literally drop his shoulder to help his brothers who were working get his royal garb messy. Ramban says, "In the stakus of Ba'amal v'lo yochel lizbol." He couldn't bear what he saw. You understand times, they talk about Hasidic rabbis that are Pol Yeshuas. They do wondrous things. How do they do it? So the story about the Heilige Ribnitzer, I heard from someone who saw it close. One time someone came to the Ribnitzer and told him the Ribnitzer was Yedua as a Pol Yeshuas, help people in all types of ways, too many stories to deny, too many people saw things to deny. You can read the book, you can talk to people. My friend Yechiel Greenblatt, someone who heard recently, told me he heard from someone who was Mishamish the Ribnitzer. He said someone came to the Ribnitzer one time and told him, sorry, he took his towel from the mikvah and he started biting it he was so upset. When you're that upset about Klal Yisrael, then you can do something when you're down for them. This is the Ramban, this is Moshe. He couldn't handle what he was seeing. But Rashi goes further. And this is Rashi you have to memorize. I hope it was on the test, on the list. Too late. Oh, maybe it's not too late. Too late. Nasan eina v'libo liomei tzar lehem. He gave his eyes and his heart to be tsar on them. Nasan eina v'libo liomei tzar lehem. As much as Moshe could perceive with his eyes, and as much as he could feel with his heart, v'nasav eina v'libo liomei tzar lehem. We hear so much bad news today. It's hard to, but you say, oh, that's sad, that's what a shame. Not Moshe Rabbeinu, he reflected, he thought about it. What's my roommate going through? What's it like to have that type of situation? What's it like to have troubles in shidduchim, troubles having children, troubles with children? What's it like for all the chayalim, sitting in a namer, all this stuff? What is it like? Rav Wolbe is deservedly a famous name, but he had a father-in-law who was all generational above him, and one of the greatest Talmidim of the Alta Slobodka, Rav Avraham Grodzinski. He was so great that the Alta, when he came and founded Chevron Yeshiva, he left him to be one of the heads of the yeshivas, the mashgiach in the yeshiva. So I heard from Rav Wolbe that, and they used to say about Rav Avraham Grodzinski, I always like to quote, that the whole world stands on Lita, so the whole world stands on the learning of Lita in Lithuania, and the whole Lithuania stands on Slobodka, and the whole Slobodka stands on Rav Avram, and Rav Avram stands on one leg. He had a bad leg, so he just said he stands on one leg. So Rav Wolbe said that Rav Avram had made it through a death line. He died in the Holocaust, but during some selection or something, he made it through. And every yid that went the wrong way, he broke down. Every single one. And Rav Leichter shared this mice with me once, and he said that the nature of a person, when you're saved from a difficulty, all you do is think about yourself. Well, later there'll be terrorist attacks. First thing, you just check yourself. Where am my family? It takes a person a long time to settle down from those feelings and think about other people. The Torah Avram wasn't like that. Rabbi Gudzinski, Gona Kaddish, every yid, it was a tragedy. Each yid. So that's the first two lessons are both like. One is v'yetz elechav, you go out. Don't live in your bubble. Number two is care, but really care. Ain't a believer that could care for Klal Yisrael. But he didn't stop with that. Next thing in the pasuk is v'yachas hamitzri. It's great to care, but you have to take action. There are many armchair caretakers in our communities. I don't like this, I don't like that. This is wrong. I hate the rabbi, the schools. Whole community's messed up. Don't complain, do something about it. I want to share a chiddush of mine. You can't always take action for many reasons. Our time and abilities are limited, but the very fact that you see something, consider taking action, already elevates you as a person. You're not a person who just goes by. Sometimes you can't do anything, but do you evaluate? Maybe there's something I could help here. Maybe I can be a force for good. I can't always carry the day, but the fact you consider that makes you a person who cares. So those are the first three lessons. V'yetzei, care, and taking action. For number 4, we have to take a step back. This is a little bit of a deeper limud here. Before Moshe took action, though, he did something else. It says, V'yifen ko v'ko. What's that idea? And he turned this way and that way. What's the idea of turning this way and that way? He didn't jump and act foolishly. He weighed his action. V'yifen ko v'ko. He considered what to do. Malbim says, maybe you'll say, Moshe didn't do what Shlo Ba'atz Sichlo Rak Mitoch Kas Pitom. Moshe got angry. He killed the Mitzri. That's it. No. V'zelo Shubach. That's not necessarily good Mila. You could be so often you take action, you make things 100 times worse. Alzel Mar Shepona Ko V'Ko. Lir'odim Yeshish Ki Asa Mitun Ba'atz Sichlo. Moshe did it with consideration and with mindfulness. And he knew that it would be dangerous if someone would have noticed. He called so he checked and no one would know. He went to check. He considered and he thought about it. Now think about this. So much, especially in the world of leadership, there's something that has to be mentioned. So much positive energy is wasted on bad ideas. So much positive energy is wasted on bad ideas. You have to think, what will be the result of this? What's the end game? What will it look like the day after? Do you have the resources to carry this out? And I want to say it deeper. If you really care, that should drive you not to waste your time on bad ideas. I don't want to do something incorrect. There's a problem here. Okay, good. So what should I do? That's not going to help anybody. That's going to take you further from your goal and waste your time and waste other people's time. Sometimes we just act to get it off our chest. I know I checked I did something box. I feel bad, I feel negative, I feel guilty. I do something. What was it worth? 0. Because there's no consideration and it went nowhere and it really got you further because you acted too hastily and you got the press against you or whatever and now people are talking this way and that way and now everything's a mess. Oh yeah, but I cared. I had good intention. You did have good intention, but you weren't v'if and ko v'ko. And sometimes we don't have the seichel or das Torah to know what we should do. And that's why sometimes you have to turn to higher authorities. I see a problem. Is this something to do? Maybe yes, maybe no. Sometimes you know, and sometimes you can act, and sometimes you need to ask higher authorities. So, Rabbosai, this is our first 4 lessons, and this was Moshe Rabbeinu at 20. Let's fast forward. Moshe Rabbeinu has run away to Midian. 60 years have passed. He's married to Parah. He's now 80 years old. Vurus. So we're at the burning bush, and Hashem shares the amazing news that he's feeling Klal Yisrael's pain is going to save them. Ata l'cha v'shlachach el Paro. Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe, I'm going to send you to Paro. Hotzias Ami b'nei Yisrael Mitzrayim. Take them out. V'yomer Moshe Elohim. Mi anochi ki elech el Paro. Who am I to go to Paro? V'chiyotzias b'nei Yisrael Mitzrayim. Mi anochi ki elech el Paro. Moshe questioned his abilities. Am I really the man for the job? A healthy, and I emphasize healthy, amount of self-doubt and self-awareness. Maybe it's not a job for me. One of the Kinyani Torah, the Memchas Kinyanim, that the Mishnah tells us at the end of Avos, is to know your place. Makiris Makoma, you know your place. To know what you're built to do, and what you should leave for other more worthy souls. There's an expression in the business world, promoted to incompetence. And I've seen this. It's so painful to hear about individuals who grow so great at a certain level, and then they, mark my words, ruin their careers by taking a job too big. You're promoted to incompetence. You're a good professor, and you're a bad manager. It's a different thing. You're good as a surgeon, and you're very bad at managing a hotel, at a hospital. You're certainly bad at managing a hotel. You're even bad at managing at a hospital. The oldest son of the Heilige Divrei Chaim was the Shinover Rav. Divrei Chaim was very famous. He had famous sons. So the Shinover Rav was an outstanding Gaon B'Kodesh. Someone with a not very nice voice, to say the least, went over to the Gabbai and asked him something, and he got up and davened. Since it was the yahrzeit for a relative. Went to the Gabbai, Shinover Rav saw this, and he starts davening. And daven he did. And it wasn't that pleasant. Yeah? And the Shinover asked him afterwards, what did you ask the Gabbai about? After shul. What did you ask the Gabbai about? And he explained that he had a yahrzeit. He said, it's your yahrzeit, that's what you daven? So Shinover asked him, did you make a siyam hashas for the yahrzeit? You finished a masechta, you didn't see a mashas? So he said, no. He said, why not? He said, that's out of my abilities. So the Shinover said, I want to tell you something. Davening for the Amidah is also out of your abilities. I asked my Rebbe one time, Rebbe, why don't you daven for the yahrzeit? Because my father died means I have to kill other people. Okay, not everybody has that cheat book. So Rabbi said, that's number 5. Question if you're the right man for the job. That's part of leadership, to know what you can do and what you can't do. So Rabbi Schneider shared Friday night, stay in your lane. Can someone else do it? The discussion continues. Beyond Moshe, that discussion when Moshe was 80. Beyond V'yosh Moshe V'yomer, V'hein lo yaminu v'lo yishmu b'koli. They're not going to believe me. I'm going to be all them. Forget it. Ki yomer lo nir lecha Hashem. Hashem didn't come to you. V'yomer elav maza b'yodcha v'yomer mateh. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, what do you have? I have a staff. V'yomer hashilcheu arza. Throw it to the ground. V'yashilcheu arza v'yilin nachash. And the staff became a viper. A snake. Why a nachash? What was that? Why was that the response? Moshe says they're not going to believe me, and Kadosh Baruch Hu says take the staff and turn it into a nachash. So Rashi says the nachash was to remind Moshe about the original snake, who was the original Lashon Hara monger. That was what he did. The snake, the nachash spoke Lashon Hara. Moshe was acting in that way, the way of the nachash, the way of the snake, by questioning the faith of Klal Yisrael. Meshech Chachma adds a very interesting thing. He says, Moshe Rabbeinu brought his wife and children to Mitzrayim. Why did he do that? To strengthen them. Look, I so much believe we're going to get out that I'm bringing my wife and kids to this hellhole. And that's going to be chazek the moon of Klal Yisrael. Good or bad? I would have said that's great. Meshech Chachma says that's bad. You think Klal Yisrael needs chizuk? You're going to go over to Reb Chaim Kanievsky and talk about the importance of learning Torah? No. You're going to go to Noach Weinberg and tell him he should get involved in Kiruv? What are you, crazy? He doesn't need chizuk. You get chizuk from him. Klal Yisrael doesn't need your wife and children in Mitzrayim to believe they're going to get out. They're full of emunah. That's the Jewish people. They're believers. So that's lesson number 6, friends. A leader has to believe in his people. Especially, but not only a leader of Jews. Klal Yisrael is special. Geniuses, driven, godly. Neshama Yonah. Look what we've accomplished in the world. Who knows the potential of Jewish people? If you don't believe that, you're not ready for leadership. Okay, Moshe takes the shlichus and does a very curious thing. He goes and asks Yisro, as the Shiva spoke about last week. He asks Yisro Rishus to leave. V'yelech Moshe v'yashuvu El Yeser Chod, no, that's Yisro. V'yomerlo Eilecha no v'ashuv el achai asher Mitzrayim v'era hodam chayim v'yomer Yisro Moshe lech l'shalom. Right, famous expression, lech l'shalom. So Moshe asked Yisro, and the Medrash says, Rashi says, to get permission. Permission? He's going to save Klal Yisrael. He can't let a small thing like permission get in his way. So this needs a lot of explanation. Or she touched on it last week, spoke about it. But however you're going to explain exactly what the idea was, I want to talk about a general principle. We see an idea that even if you're doing very, very great things, there's a way to do it and there's a way not to do it. And many leaders fall into this mistake, and it's so easy to do that the ends justify the means. I have to get something important done. There's X problem. I got to get this done. And sometimes you have to let go of many good ideas because of that permission, however you look at it. Okay, so those were the numbers 5, 6, and 7. So that was Moshe when he was 20, and that was Moshe when he was 80. Now, for 8, 9, 10, we have to fast forward again to the end of Moshe's life. We have incredible pasuk all the way in Dvarim Perek Aleph, pasuk Dalet. Going forward. Out of Shmos, Vayikra, Bamidbar, beginning of Dvarim. Be'ever Yardin, Be'eretz Moav, Hoel Moshe Be'er HaTorah Zos Leimor. We're at the end of 40 years. Moshe Rabbeinu is 120. It's all ending soon. It's Shvat. Moshe's going to die in Zion Adar. We're 37 days, 40 days, however exactly many we are before Moshe Rabbeinu passes away. He's lived a long, rich life. What has he been doing for 40 years? Teaching Klal Yisrael Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu. Hoel Moshe bears the Torah Zos. Moshe began to teach. That's an incredible pasuk. What beginning did he have? So we're going to look at 3 approaches in the Mefarshim. The Ibn Ezra says, Heichal lifaresh libanim shenodu b'midbar mashir lebosam. he began to explain to the children what their parents went through. He started speaking to the next generation. We've been together 40 years. That generation has passed away. Heichal lefaresh lebanim shenoldu b'midbar, the new generation that was born in the midbar. What happened? Labotam. Your grandfathers, I took them out of Mitzrayim, and we taught them the Torah. There was an Egel. Let's not talk about that. And then there was other problems and other highlights, and we had 42 trips. It was unbelievable, etc. Heichal lefaresh lem. The Sforno says that was the beginning. He began to talk about to the next generation. The Sforno says, Hoel leva'er, he began to explain, Mashechashev shib shabo safik achrei moto. He began to think about what's going to happen when I'm not here. When the next stage, what will be. So of course Moshe Rabbeinu had been teaching the Torah for years. And that was his whole essence in the Midbar. As the Rambam brings in one of his Akdamas, and had a whole Seder, he teach them, and then, etc. Moshe Rabbeinu taught everybody. So, but there was a new beginning to his teaching. That, by the way, without going to the specifics, was Stam an incredible lesson. Moshe began new stuff. At 120, he began new stuff. I guess it was 119 now, but on the cusp of 120, he's beginning something new. So, this is Moshe, the national leader. According to Ibn Ezra, he's worried about the next generation. I had my people, but now's the Banim. That generation passed away, but now it's the Banim. And I have to explain to them also. There's a new generation that needs me. And Moshe's worried about them too. One thinks of the great Hasidic rabbis. Just name a few, not to exclude, God forbid anybody, but like the Klosenberger, the Satmarov, the Belzerov, who all lost everything in the world. Everything. I mean, they lost everything. Wives, children, Hasidim. And then rebuilt a new generation. The Yiddishkeit we live in is because of them. And the Rosh Yeshiva, like Rabbi Cutler, the Panovich Rav, who came from Europe, many others. And they rebuilt. That's lesson number 8. Don't limit yourself to your people. See the new leader. A leader sees new opportunities in front of him and her. As Moshe Rabbeinu did. Imagine if one of them said, and there were rabbis that said this, my Hasidim are dead. I'll have a little kloy somewhere. They rebuilt a world that we live in today, which didn't have to be rebuilt the way it did today. Because they said, exactly like Moshe Rabbeinu did, that was Europe, and it was great, and it's gone, and now I'm rebuilding. They didn't retire. My father once told me, he was I'll leave out the name of the yeshiva, but he was in yeshiva, and he said that some of the phenomenal European-born Rosh Yeshiva and Rabbeim, who they thought would be teaching in Europe, could never come to terms with the apple pie eating, baseball loving, that's a game they play in America, baseball loving, it's like football, but yeah, I don't know who's making more money today, right? Quarterbacks, but, right? He couldn't come to terms with the apple pie eating, baseball playing Americans. They just couldn't do it. Like, I was going to be a Rosh Yeshiva, I was going to be a Rebbe in Europe, and now these guys, like, a ball and a bat, and you hit it, and people run after it. Like, if you're hitting it, why are you running after it? He's pushing it away, and they're running after it. Doesn't make any sense. Put in before Shabbos. This is insanity. These are the guys I'm dealing with, and my father told me, and I saw it afterwards in a bunch of other places. This idea that they couldn't make that they couldn't, and it's understandable. They couldn't make that thing to the new generation, but they lost out. But the Rosh Yeshiva, who connected, Mendel, Kaplan, and many, many others, who saw past it, Eli Chazan, and just some names that I've heard specifically were like that, they became great Rosh Yeshivas, and they rebuilt Torah. Rabbi Cutler, of course. And they didn't limit themselves, and they didn't see that. David so many. But that was a challenge. That was a challenge Moshe Rabbeinu had at the end of his life that they didn't. And they rebuilt the world. To see the potential of the next generation, even though it's worse in certain ways, that's a challenge. And to make a profound impact. The Sforno again said, "Hol levar mashechashiv shibo savik akremoto." He started thinking about what's going to happen after I die. It wasn't to this next generation per se, but what doubts are going to happen. And I'm now foreseeing what the doubts are going to be. According to the Sforno, the idea is it's being concerned about what will be when you're gone. There's something great here. This is Klal Yisrael. It's bigger than me, Moshe Rabbeinu. And I want it to continue and flourish after I gone. See, a Baal Gaiva works the opposite. The more things that fall apart, the Ayakoko is a famous name that this is true by, the person who rebuilt Chrysler, but then it fell apart after he was gone. The more things fall apart when I'm gone, the more it was dependent on me. That means the more it's dependent on me, the bigger my ego will be. The book Good to Great lists this as a problem with very charismatic leaders. Not Moshe. He's thinking what's going to be afterwards. So those are lessons 8 and 9. A leader continues to see possibilities and doesn't let go. And a leader thinks what's going to be after him and doesn't make it dependent on himself. Let's finish with number 10, the Medrash. This is Lashon Sifri, on those psukim. Kfar ani samach lemita. Misha shama pasuk echa v'shachacho. Someone heard one pasuk and forgot. Yov v'shino. Come, I'll relearn it with you. Misha shama parsha achas yov v'shino. Moshe began to teach. Meaning what? He was ready to do a review with each Talmud, with each member of Klal Yisrael, for each and every member of Klal Yisrael. According to the Ibn Ezra and the Sforno, Moshe is taking national responsibility. The next generation, what's going to happen to Klal Yisrael when I'm gone, figuring it out, seeing into the future. But according to the Sifri, it was Moshe the Melamed coming to teach individuals. And sometimes big leaders forget the value of a simple thing like learning a pasuk with a Jewish boy. But Moshe Rabbeinu didn't forget how much every Jewish child's knowing the Torah was worth. And before he left the world, he spent his time learning with individuals. And imagine what type of impression that made on that little Yingala. He told his great-great-grandchildren, this pasuk I learned with Moshe Rabbeinu. People met the Chavetz Chaim once, and the whole life they were talking about the times they had it. Imagine what it was like for those children. This pasuk, Yasala, Moshe, I learned this with Moshe. That Moshe Rabbeinu. And you're named after him. I reviewed these psukim with Moshe Rabbeinu. So that, friends, is our final lesson of the day. In the big issues, don't forget the individuals, and specifically how important it is to teach individuals. Rabbosai, there's some real leaders in this crowd, some amazing leaders in our base medrash, but we all need to be leaders, and you all will be leaders on some level. Leadership needs to be something we keep working on, and there's no better place to start than learning all the lessons from the greatest leaders that could be, that ever were, that ever will be. The Gdol Yisrael, starting with Moshe and the Avos, down to all the generations. Thank you.